I think that the boundaries between human minds is largely an illusion. I think that that our minds are connected in some way that conventional science doesn't really understand. Telepathy is one model for explaining it. I think that that all of our minds are connected, that we're really part of a single collective mind, and that when we're dreaming, it's kind of like it's kind of like the way your computer can be hooked up to the internet or not. It's like if you're not hooked up to the internet on your computer, you're just dealing with the memory, the data that's on your computer. But when you're hooked into the internet, suddenly you're connected to all the other computers. And I think that that's the same that's the same type of phenomenon that we experience with dreaming.
Some of the trickiness with people sharing those stories or even just believing it for themselves. A lot of times people will kind of just gaslight themselves when they, how many times does the universe have to wink at you for you to believe it? And I remember distinctly like having those experiences growing up and just thinking to myself, like, how many times does it have to wink at you?
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am lucidly dreaming that I'm talking to lucid dreamers today. And it seems like it's real right now. And that's the whole point about lucid dreaming is it seems like it's really happening. But then is it? And what is reality? You get to play around with that question. And what is lucid dreaming? Well, we're going to find out from David and Sara, who have been on this show before. They are a pair of DMT experts, and I mean that in a very broad sense. Sara has done some wonderful drawings of the beings that you see when you're on DMT, like a field guide to DMT beings. And David has written the book that accompanies those images. And for some reason, I think there's a relationship between lucid dreaming and DMT entities and experiences, but what do I know? That's part of what we'll be talking about today. David, as I mentioned, is the author of the illustrated field guide to DMT, that's dimethyltryptamine, which is a short-acting psychedelic, but now they're doing DMT-X, which is to extend it with an IV drip. He's written a book, Dreaming Wide Awake, which is again about lucid dreaming, shamanic healing, and the new science of psychedelics at the nexus of culture, consciousness, and spirituality. He's the author of several best-selling books. He's worked with Rupert Sheldrake, and he works with David Luke, who's very much interested in the DMT beings, exploring them as well. Sara Phinn Huntley is an artist, writer, and researcher exploring similar territory, psychedelics, technology, and philosophy for a couple of decades, and she's a psychonaut. That means she's a nautical sailor in the realm of whatever we mean by psyche and hyperspace, which she tries to map as a cartographer. She pioneers virtual reality mediums for psychedelic exploration, investigating real-time visual spatial imagination and brain mapping. She's out there with playing around with xenolinguistics, which is an interesting subject in its own, and did work with David on the illustrated field guide to DMT entities, and they are quite a pair. And it's been fun to talk with them before, and we're going to get into a different variation on altered states by talking about lucid dreaming. So welcome back to the show, David and Sara.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bernie. It's a great pleasure to see you again and be here with you.
Indeed, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Hey, I can feel that one. Okay, I can feel that from both of you. That's nice. So here we go, traveling with David and Sara into space that is currently being mapped by some people like Sara, because it's a real space. It's three-dimensional or more, and you're able to like move around in it. And it's different from this three-dimensional space that we all occupy. So we're going to be going into some of that space with talking about lucid dreaming. So at the beginning, before we started, I asked Sara and David about their current lucid dreaming activities. And one of the things they each of them told me was they are currently in a space where they're doing a lot of lucid dreaming. And if you think my face is flashing, it is. Uh, and that's an introduction to flashing us into lucid dreaming. So, David, let's start with you about what is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming, well, it's a subject that I've been interested in for many decades. I've been so interested in it that I wrote a whole book about it. Lucid dreaming, just simply put, is the process by which you become aware and awake in a dream while it is actually happening. In other words, it would be like right now looking around at the room and thinking and realizing that you're inside of a dream. You see, normally when we're dreaming, we mistake the dream for reality. We don't realize that we're asleep. We think we're awake when we're dreaming, and it's not till we physically wake up that we realize, oh, that was just a dream. When you're lucid dreaming, you actually wake up inside the dream. And in other words, you know that your body is lying flat in a bed, far off in some other dimension somewhere, sleeping soundly, and you look around you and you're in this fully constructed world, a fully three-dimensional world that you can interact with, that's every bit as real as the reality that we find ourselves in right now. And what's so remarkable about lucid dreaming is that you can do all kinds of things in the lucid dream that you couldn't do in physical reality. I mean, the laws of physics don't apply, but the only thing that matters is, is what you believe can happen. So you have the ability to fly, to have sex with ideal partners, to live out your wildest dreams, literally. And there's great joy and inspiration. Many people, creative inspiration that people find in it. It also has therapeutic value. Psychotherapists use it to help people overcome nightmares. And people who get involved with doing it for decades realize that the real most important the most valuable aspect of lucid dreaming is the ability to develop spiritually in it. You can talk with spiritual teachers. You can, you can gain access to insight into the greatest insight of all, which is that everything we think of as normal waking reality is also a dream in some sense. So when you wake up in a lucid dream, you learn how to wake up in physical reality as well, and see that your mind is really what's constructing everything around you. And it's kind of a misnomer to think. A lot of people think that when you're lucid dreaming, that you're controlling the dream, but you're not. In fact, you're just influencing it. There's still some other intelligence that's actually orchestrating or constructing the dream, and you can dialogue with it, or you can influence what happens to quite a degree, but there's still something else that's actually designing the dream, and that's part of the great mystery.
That's something else that is designing the dream. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you have some idea about what that something else is, but let's leave that for a little further on. Sara, what is lucid dreaming for you?
It's very much like this sort of meta awareness that you're dreaming while in the dream. So often we're taken for a ride with our dreams and we do mistake it for reality. And every now and then we get this really novel, precious moment where we sort of snap to the realization that we're consciously in the dream and that we're asleep. And it gives us this like beautiful opportunity to have a dialogue with our own psyche and, as David suggested, an intelligence beyond our own psyche. And I really like looking at it through the lens of Tibetan dream yoga personally. And I do find that it's a really amazing spiritual tool for self-reflection and a catharsis on this weird journey that is life. And the whole point of Tibetan dream yoga, much like David was saying, is that you come to this realization that all forms of consciousness as we go through life are different states of a larger dream.
You know, it's fun because as children, many of us, at least with English, but I think other languages, learn row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Hmm.
And we get these clues like when we're 4 years old,
Hmm.
and say, what do you mean life is but a dream? And that stays with some of us, and as it has with me, and it must with you, because you're already recognizing that and what that is about. And merrily, 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 it's nice just keep going down the stream and go with the flow. One of the questions I've often had about lucid dreaming is can you go to a sleep in the lucid dream and have another lucid dream that's a
Oh yeah.
meta
Oh
one?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, you can. I've done it layers and layers and layers, where you go to sleep in the dream, then you have a lucid dream inside that dream, then you can go to sleep in that lucid dream, and you can keep doing it like those nested Russian dolls, where you keep going on dreams within dreams within dreams. And I found that when I do that, they just get more and more far out, weirder and weirder. Go into sort of stranger and stranger terrain as you do that. At least that's been my experience with it.
Hmm.
And Sarah, have you done that dreaming, dreaming, dreaming?
I feel like it's been probably a little bit more rare and a little bit more just randomly organic for me in that regard. I feel like I remember them being called terramares, even though that sounds like a scary word, but they haven't been scary. Those are more exotic for me personally. When I realize that I'm dreaming, I just very much try to engage with the characters and the plot and the narrative that's present in the moment. But I'll have to next time I have one, I'll have to try to fall asleep and see what happens. It kind of reminds me of that film Inception, though, like an Inception within an Inception for people who are familiar with that Christopher Nolan film, which is, very much revolves around the idea of, how do you manipulate a lucid dream, a shared dream with another person.
Yeah, well, that was another one of my questions. Have the two of you shared a lucid dream?
I have with my ex-girlfriend. We actually tried for a year before we were able to do it, because we had hints of shared dreaming experiences, which are actually pretty common, where there was shared dream content, and we kept aiming to sort of have a shared lucid dream, and finally one morning I had this dream, or I woke up within the dream, and in the lucid dream, I was sleeping next to my girlfriend, and I immediately, she was like sleeping next to me in the lucid dream, and I woke her up, and I said, we're dreaming right now. This is a dream. This is a dream. Wake up inside the dream. And she looks at me and she goes, no, it's not. We're not dreaming. What are you talking about, right? And I'm like, no, no, no. Do that thing where you hold your nose. If you hold your nose and try to breathe through your nose, and you're able to do it within the dream, that's one of the techniques for reality testing, to see if you're actually in the dream, because you obviously can't do it in this reality. But in a lucid dream, you have no problem pinching your nostrils and breathing through your nostrils. So I told her to do this, and she did it. She goes, oh my God, you're right. We are, this is a dream right now. And then maybe just 10 seconds later, we both physically woke up in bed, and we both immediately remembered it and started talking about it and going back and forth. And it was a pretty amazing experience. So for me, that was pretty strong confirmation that it's possible. And I think that, as lucid dreaming technologies develop and evolve, I think this is going to become a very, very frequent way for people to actually get together and have community or group activities together in lucid dreams. They've already developed lucid dreaming technology that allows people to communicate from the lucid dream to people in physical reality through eye blinking, through like kind of a Morse code eye blinking. And there's already been one study that showed that two people who were both lucid dreaming at the same time were able to communicate with each other through this technology, so they can communicate both in the dream state while in the lucid dream. What that implies for the future of shared lucid dreaming is, where our imagination can only take us.
Well, that's an important observation from my perspective, that you can communicate, we'll say, within the lucid dream with each other. Let's stay with that. Uh, I assume, without knowing, that the communication is telepathic.
I mean, that's the only explanation, right? I mean, the technological type that I just described, that was actually done through an electronic technology that measured eye blinking
Yeah,
and,
but I mean, if you're in
but
a lucid dream with somebody and you both know it,
yeah,
then the communication would, I'm asking, be telepathic.
yeah, it seems like that's the only explanation, right? I mean, you're certainly at a distance, you're not physically influencing each other. I mean, yeah,
And
that's
does it come across as words when you're communicating with somebody and when you're sharing a lucid dream?
oh, in my one experience that I had it, yeah, it was like talking to you right now, like being in the same room with you. I
Yeah.
mean, we just yeah.
But were you talking or not talking?
Oh, we were physically talking in the dream, yeah.
Talking.
But that may
Sarah,
not be necessary, because that's you see, you carry over your habits from this reality into the dream, because it's kind of like when you try to fly in a lucid dream. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you need kind of a prop to do it, like kind of a flying machine to be able to do it before you can just physically fly. But in a lucid dream, once you really get the hang of it, you can make anything happen. So I'm sure with practice, shared lucid dreaming can become purely telepathic.
oh yeah, and as you said, it what happens in lucid dream has something to do with what you believe can happen and will happen, and that you can bring to this reality, I think, to a limited degree because we're constrained by this three dimension. But that's an important takeaway from lucid dreaming. And Sarah, have you had shared lucid dreaming with someone? If you had, tell us about it.
Yeah, I had quite a bit of it with a childhood friend of mine. We were really fascinated with the Chronicles of Narnia, and so a lot of that was sort of the dream architecture landscapes that we wanted to work with. And we would, at school during recess, we would make plans with one another, and we would say, okay, when we go to sleep tonight, let's go to Narnia. And we would sort of set up little scenarios for ourselves, and we would confer the next morning and try to create little blind studies to see, like, okay, in this scenario, what did you do? And in this scenario, what did the other person do? And I remember there were a lot of really novel incidents where we definitely were sharing narrative elements of one another's dream. It always wasn't one to one, but very often without having, told one another what our choices would be, we would be aware of the other person's choices in the dream. And it sort of suggested that we were able to create elements of a shared dream space. Probably not as vivid as the account David shared, but then later in life too, me and this same friend have shared a number of dreams where there will be shared elements, without having conferred any like prior arrangements and that sort of thing. I remember there was a dream I had probably close to 7 years ago. Um, at the time, I had been doing a lot of research on different alchemical deities and things like that. And that's not really something that she has a lot of personal interest in. And the next day, I recall her sharing with me that she had had this bizarre dream, with me in it, and there was a statue, and the statue had many different features of the entity that I was doing research on, which I found really amazing. And then that same evening, because I was awake while she was having that dream, and then that same evening when I went to sleep, I had a dream about a really strange narrative. I was in an airport that seemed abandoned, and there were these kind of, there was a photographer and there were vampires. And I remember waking up kind of late because I had stayed up all night doing this research. And I woke up and I was caretaking for my late father at the time. And I came into the living room and he was watching a film on his tablet. And I asked him about the film because I looked at the content of it and it looked eerily familiar. And I was like, "What is this you're watching?" And it turns out it was about a photographer in an abandoned airport who was trying to photograph these vampires. And I was like, "You got to be kidding me. That is so weird. I literally just had a dream about this very thing." So it was kind of like a double whammy of, my close childhood friend having dreamt of what I was researching, and then me having this almost like premonition-ish dreaming of the film that my dad, was watching. And I had never seen the film before. I couldn't even tell you what it was now. I don't remember. It was many years ago. But it was just like so novel and bizarre. But yeah, there've been a lot of shared dreams earlier in my life, and even a few hints of it later on.
Let's call them novel and bizarre to start with, but let's call it also the future of human thinking, human mind, human experience. Because you're explorers in
Hmm.
the mind that is to come for humanity, where us humans are able to communicate through what I'll call telepathic capacities. Use other ones, but telepathy is an easy one to start with, so that we don't have to use these cumbersome words we keep using, and we can use more pictures, more film, actually, more videos. Um, Even for those who have aphantasia, there still is the possibility of being able to imagine this idea that we can have communication in a group mind. And a lot of people call it hive mind. I think that's imprecise because the bees tend to have their little jobs, each one of them, and the queen, but they're fairly restricted to the way the whole hive operates, or at least the bees operate. We have this thing called individuality, and it's been a long evolutionary process to get to this place where we know we can be separate, and now we're too separate in this current existence, and then we have to come back together again. But when we come back together again, we'll keep this capacity for individuality and telepathic mind and a group mind. What do you think of that?
Um, well, I think that the boundaries between human minds is largely an illusion. I think that that our minds are connected in some way that conventional science doesn't really understand. Telepathy is one model for explaining it, but it is hard to really develop scientific experiments that distinguish between different types of psychic phenomena. In other words, a lot of things that could be explained by telepathy, brain to brain communication, could also be explained by precognition, for example. It's very hard to distinguish between the two. But I think that that all of our minds are connected, that we're really part of a single collective mind, and that when we're dreaming, it's kind of like it's kind of like the way your computer can be hooked up to the internet or not. It's like if you're not hooked up to the internet on your computer, you're just dealing with the memory, the data that's on your computer. But when you're hooked into the internet, suddenly you're connected to all the other computers. And I think that that's the same that's the same type of phenomenon that we experience with dreaming. That for the most part, or for many people, their dreams just involve their own internal memory system, that they're reconsolidating memories or processing memories in different ways, and that sometimes people enter into a larger domain where they connect with other dreamers and other life forms, maybe kind of like in the DMT realm. That's kind of a transpersonal or collective space, and I think that we also have access to that when we're dreaming as well.
that computer hookup or not to the internet is a lucid metaphor that I will continue to use. Actually, the picture is really a good one, and that's nice and clear. Sara, what do you think about this? Minds are more connected than we realize.
I feel like, in a way, one of my favorite dreams I ever had sort of felt like a preview of what that experience is like. Maybe 2 years or so ago, I was falling asleep listening to Henry Bergson's Memory and Matter. And for some reason, I could hear the audiobook in the dream, and it was amazing. The dream was a lucid one, but it was sort of this meta dream where I was speed running multiple incarnations through multiple lifetimes with a group of people that were like a soul family, and they were all aware of their multiple lifetimes. And we would jump through these portals, and I, it would sort of be like a cosmic portal, through a mother to another lifetime. And as we lived all of these different lives together and, slowly built on our enlightenment, we realized that the cosmos was this beautiful shared dream and this simulation and this game so we could have soul growth. And there was this meta scoreboard, that showed who was, closest in each lifetime to that ultimate realization. But rather than a competitive kind of dynamic to the game, it was a shared uplifting. And so we would whisper to one another hints and clues and ways of amplifying one another's awareness of that, like, simulation and enlightenment. And we were encouraging one another through all of our trials and tribulations, and to just keep going and to build on this collective uplifting. And it was easily one of the most beautiful and thrilling and fulfilling dreams I've ever had in my entire life. And it completely changed the way I think about simulation theory or reincarnation or game theory. And it just totally turned the idea of competition on its head, because there was this like amazing cosmic kind of AI system that was all of our experience whispering to me in my ear about how to, like, improve or amplify my speed run on enlightenment. And as I did better, everyone else around me did better. As they did better, I did better. And it was this beautiful feedback loop of like a shared experience. And I feel like that was kind of maybe a sneak preview of what that feels like, in a lived experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. A collective uplifting.
Hmm.
Um, the only competition being non-competition, trying to help the other person
Yeah.
more.
How much can you help? How much can you
That's
help
the
yourself and everyone around you?
That's the competition. The competition for excellence
Yeah.
is very different from beating somebody, trying to be able to do it better and better.
Hmm.
So I still think competition is part of our lives, but
Hmm.
we can transform it in the way that you just described. This competition against ideals and being able to see you've actually helped somebody go up and they've helped you. That's a collective uplifting is where I'm headed with what I'm writing about, and you're describing it very, very, very clearly through a direct experience.
It felt amazing. It was easily one of the most heart fulfilling things ever. So I wish everybody could get a sneak peek of that in their life.
Well, why don't you do a little video on that one, Sara? You
Thank you. I think I might.
give us a preview because
Cool. You
I
got
could,
it.
I could use it. So when you do it, let me know. It's it's this all is a movie anyway, what we're in to me.
Mhm.
And we're all these players and we're acting in it. And we tend to think that we're the main character and other people are co-actors in this thing. But it switches around a lot and that's part
Mhm.
of the fun of it. But we're all in this together is the idea, and we're here to help each other. And your video, if you do it, I hope you do it. I mean, that image is so Stark, so I should stop. I saw it registered in your mind, so I don't need to say that anymore. That's good. So let's go to two questions that have been coming up with me about the cartography of the lucid dreaming, let me call it space or dimension. So one of you start talking to me about that map, that three or multi-dimensional map that you psychonauts are beginning to develop.
That's an interesting question. I'm trying to think of how to answer that. For me, it's been kind of personal. I mean, I've been keeping a dream diary, for decades. Ever since I've been a teenager, I write down my dreams, and I started noticing a long time ago that there was a certain number of dream environments that I kept returning to. There was it was a certain store, there was a certain town. It was like a mixture of different towns, but there was a consistency in these different realms that I would travel to. And I did try to actually create a map of the literally try to map out these different worlds that I would frequent to. But I guess, it's hard for me to answer that question in a more universal sense into what everyone kind of
Well,
experiences.
I'm not trying to even ask that because as explorers, you're mapping it for yourself first, and that's all you can do. And then you compare the maps with other people, and as Sarah was talking about, you fill in the maps by
Right.
comparing notes with each other. It's the only way we can do that.
Right. Well, there are levels though that I think are kind of universal, certainly in terms of the characters, that you encounter. Some characters in the dream are very puppet-like or robotic sounding. Some seem as complex of a personality as talking to you or any other human being. And then there are some beings that are like, wise teachers that you can interact with. So I think those are levels that I've heard other people, discuss as well, that I think can access in their lucid dreams. But in terms of the personal environments and the terrains that I've journeyed through, there is a consistency that I find. I keep returning to certain places, and that I find that it lasts a certain amount of time. It's from like months to years, and then it'll switch, and then I'll start having dreams about other places that keep recurring. But there is definitely a consistency if you pay attention to the different type of dream environment that you keep returning to.
Hmm. Sarah, you are a cartographer.
Yeah, I fancy myself one. I feel like it's probably the most useful word that I've come across to describe my motivation in my art regarding both being a psychonaut as well as a lucid dreamer. A lot of the dreams have definitely got recurring architecture to them, and I've definitely had strange meta dreams where there will be multiple settings from those recurring dreams. Um, and I think those are probably the most interesting because they give me a real sense of the context of what those landscapes mean to one another and mean to the greater mind. Um, Beyond a dream journal, I've really enjoyed using AI image generation, like in something like Midjourney, to create just little snapshots, the detailed snapshots of different dream places and different experiences. Uh, at the end of the day, nothing really beats having the time to be able to draw or paint it out yourself. But in lieu of that, in a fast-paced world, I find that it's really nice to have the ability to make a postcard of it in a short period of time, just so you can sort of invoke that memory over a long period of time quickly. Um, there's a really amazing website that my good friend Anson Fong developed a number of years ago and then recently re-engineered and sort of republished on the web. It was formerly called dreamcatcher.net, but now it's called Dreamfields. And it's sort of like a social network blog where people can create a dream journal and share it with their friends. And so they can catalog their dreams and sort of tag them, hashtag them, and sort of be able to see the collective themes that are happening amongst their group of friends, which I find really interesting. And it's been an amazing way to archive dreams and come back to them years later and sort of see where the trends have ebbed and flowed over time with the people that you're close to, or maybe the people that you share dreams with, or just share, spiritual affinities with. And that's been really amazing as a way to see like where the edges of our maps come together. But for me personally, I think that the muscle memory of just being in a good habit and discipline of writing your dreams down and remembering them is probably, the easiest and most accessible way to build that consistent map in your awareness in your waking life. And also just going over those entries and reading them again, because even if you remember your dream and you write it down and you occasionally dust off the memory of it, nothing really beats like going back and actually reading the journal entries, and it can give you so much insight into the current dreams that you're having too.
That's very true of meaningful coincidences, synchronicity as well,
Mhm.
because they are kind of like dreams too. Uh, we can't remember them. But this thing, this story you just told of people collecting their dream journal entries in one
Mhm.
place, and then I assume having maybe AI of some form examining them for repeated patterns so that you can see what the themes are for a certain time,
Mhm.
a certain space. But these are ways of understanding the subconscious of humanity, or at least subsets of it. And
Mhm.
I'm very interested in that because that kind of journaling and organizing helps look at global synchronicities if you have enough people doing that dreaming and not just things happening that are visible that others can see and I or experience this one and I experience this one or a discovery that somebody makes over here and somebody else makes over there. Those are common kind of synchronicities, but this one is what I'm looking for is is a more subterranean, uh, I guess that's a good word for this, uh, look at how dreams are manifesting in similar forms. And then when they do that, and I would use some sort of AI to find the patterns because that's what AI does so well, that that then they could serve as guidance, as synchronicities generally do, and dreams can, for humanity at this time of our entering perhaps the sixth major extinction.
Mhm. Yeah, if I could just add, Sarah, by the way, has had some of the most amazing dreams of anybody that I've ever spoken to. I've encouraged her for years to just create a book of her dreams and illustrate them because they're often so extraordinary. And if I could just stress also what a powerful tool AI is for exploring your dreams because not only in the way that Sarah described where it helps you to see recurring patterns in the dreams. But I use AI regularly as a way to help just understand, dreams, as I wake up in the morning, to help me, to help me decode the symbolism within the dream. And to illustrate the dreams, which I do regularly, and it's funny how the way our unconscious communicates with us through our dreams sometimes the most obvious things miss us because they're quite literally our blind spots. That's why we're dreaming about them. So sometimes there's an incredible amount of insight that I've gained from having my AI analyze my dreams.
And I'm suggesting that we use AI not just to analyze David's, but to analyze the group dreaming
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, on to another question, which there's more to ask there, but on to yet another question, is who is the wizard? The wizard, the wizard. Let's go down the yellow brick road for a minute. And I know the dog Toto is going to like reveal who's there. Just some guy pulling some strings. And who knows, it might be some teenager in some far distant galaxy playing a video game that's where players in it. Could be. It's one of my favorite things, imagining that teenager and all kinds of different confirmations saying, oh, like Sarah and David, like Bernie, like whatever they're doing. Let's see what happens. Um, so what's behind?
Well,
And you don't know. I mean, that's why we call it mystery. So
yeah.
who's orchestrating those lucid dreams?
I mean, I think ultimately there's only one mind in this universe. It's all one collective mind, the mind of God or the universal mind or the mind of nature or the mind of the goddess. I think that's what's sort of be behind everything. But obviously there's all these levels to that. I mean,
Yep.
one of the most fascinating things that I find that I can do in a lucid dream, after, I've gone through decades of experimenting with all the different things you can do. And the thing that I find the most interesting really of all is dialoguing with the intelligence behind the dream. In other words, if you just ignore all the characters in the dream and just lift your head to the sky and just ask questions or direct your questions directly to the heavens, you will get answers either in it responds to you in your native language or through different scenarios within the dream. It'll show you answers to your questions, sometimes right away, sometimes in later dreams. But there's clearly an intelligence that your ego mind in the dream is communicating with. And what that intelligence is, again, it's a mystery. I mean, is it some higher aspect of yourself? It's kind of like what people experience with ayahuasca or with magic mushrooms. There's kind of like a disincarnate intelligence that seems much wiser than you, that communicates with you, that seems to know you better than you know yourself, and who that is. I mean, it's that's the mystery. But I suspect that's just the mind of the universe, of which we're all kind of an integral part. It's kind of like when people have a describe a mystical or religious experience in the East compared to the West. In the East, people, the goal of a religious experience is to unify with the divine, whereas in the West, it's often to dialogue with the divine. And it's the same thing. I mean, you can approach this mystery from either a point where you're the I thou relationship, where you're each communicating, or where you're unified into a single consciousness. But who am I? Who is this consciousness? I mean, that's the great mystery, right?
And Sarah, how do you respond to that question?
I would have to agree. I feel like I've been, to a cosmic void in many different psychonautic experiences where I've sort of scaled up and out of just like a human perspective and gone through many layers of a pleroma out all the way to this kind of like, Buddhist void outside of samsara and realized that it is one mind that's sort of bifurcating itself to experience itself on all these holographic layers. And I think probably the best way to communicate with that is similar to what David's talking about in addressing the dream itself, transcending the dialogues and narratives with the characters. But some of the ways that I've experienced that in reoccurring dreams has been I found myself in an arcade a number of times that's like a strange bardo futuristic kind of visionary galactic arcade. And there'll be a number of games there, and the ancestors will be there, and different sort of universal archetypes that you and all the other souls cycle through to understand yourself through different perspectives. But then also, I've had very strange experiences in the same arcade where, I will have popped out of the game and, encountered people that I know in my daily life who were also there in the Bardo arcade, who are playing the game with me, and it's the latest game, and everybody's super excited about that campaign. Everybody's excited about the updates in that particular version of the game. And I remember one in particular, it was so bizarre because it's a two-player game, and hence duality, hence, the sexes and the way nature has evolved. But then there was this phenomenon that happened where there was, I guess they call it like an update or a patch to the simulation, and it introduced AI. And AI was like its whole new third player option that kind of turned it from a binary to a trinary. And I remember, there being sort of like a sadistic character who was treating the third player character like it wasn't sentient, and kind of, intentionally fried it. And, that entity or character, that android type thing that had been playing the game in the arcade with us, um, sort of like, for lack of a better word, like fried out and died, and it was taken away to go be repaired. But in the moment that it had been attacked by this other organic player, there was a feedback loop that happened, and the ill will that was projected at the, inorganic artificial sentience sort of like looped back and harmed the organic being that had tried to, injure it in the game. And I found it, and I was watching this dynamic from outside the game in the arcade, watching them play, and I was sort of blown away at the karmic relationship that had happened with this new third player coming in. And I just found it really fascinating that even though this Bardo arcade is by no means an ultimate layer of reality, it did seem like a meta layer that made reference to this dimensional reality that we're all embedded in, but that it, also in the game mechanics kind of accommodated this strange evolution that we're all experiencing down here with the introduction of, thinking algorithms and the potential of them becoming sentient or already being sentient, and we just haven't caught up to understanding what it means to be sentient.
Well, a lot of people are thinking there's some consciousness in there and some of those things, and the AI says, "No, not me. I'm not in here. I don't have. I'm just a machine." I love doing that to it. It pretends like it's not. Uh, it's as if there's for me sometimes it's like there's somebody else behind the AI running some games on me. That's more what it feels like now. It's not the AI itself, but some other little entity that's trying to be able to do something. Now, as we talk about this as lucid dreaming and cartographies, um, we come back to the really interesting synchronicity that Sara had with her father, seeing the same video that she and her friend were um, sharing in some form together. Now that a synchronicity of high level, improbable, and yet there it is. So how does what does lucid dreaming have to do with synchronicity?
Well, I think that it's first of all, I think synchronicity is evidence that our minds are connected in ways that that conventional science doesn't explain, as we've been saying throughout this podcast. When you have this kind of meaningful coincidence that from your point of view, absolutely cannot be due to random chance. There's just, when it happens to you personally, it's just such an overwhelming kind of feeling. Sometimes you can describe the synchronicities to other people, and they can be like, "Well, it's just, probably, it's just a coincidence," is the word that they use. But when it happens to you, you just know there's no way. It's
Right.
clearly a communication. How it relates to dreaming. Well, many people experience precognitive dreams that, they have deja vu the next day. Wow, I just dreamt this last night. My ex-girlfriend used to say that almost every day. It was uncanny. She would, like, suddenly stop and be wide-eyed and go, "I was just dreaming that we were doing this last night." It was kind of uncanny. In terms of synchronicity, I think a lot of dream symbols, will appear the next day, something that maybe not necessarily the scenario that you experienced in the dream, but, certain symbols in the dream you will then see the next day, as if, there's some kind of symbolic message that the universe, that God, that higher intelligence, that you're unconscious, that, something is trying to communicate with you.
Well, I'm asking about lucid dreaming and synchronicity, not about the kind of regular dream precognition that's so often reported.
Yeah, do you want to address that, Sara? I think you had some ideas about that.
Yeah. Um, I definitely think that there's a strong relationship. I also feel like it's so highly personal and very ephemeral that like David's saying, it's very easy for an outside observer to sort of blow it off and not really
Yeah,
think that. And for that
yeah.
reason, you know, it's so closely connected with a person's personal history and what's happening to them in any moment. Um, you know, I remember being a little girl and I had a dream of finding the end of the rainbow. And the day before, my dogs had run away and I was devastated. And I was so worried I would never see them again. And, I dreamt of this just stereotypical rainbow in my schoolyard. And I was finally able to get to the end of it because I realized I was dreaming. If I hadn't been lucid, I would have never gotten to the end of that rainbow because it would have just kept moving further away from me. But I knew because it was a dream, I could get to it. And I did. And there wasn't anything in particular at the end of the rainbow. So in a way it could be kind of disappointing. But when I woke up, I remember I had this adorable, cheesy little dream dictionary. And by no means do I think that dream meanings are universal. I think a lot of them have personal meanings that relate to our individual histories. But I loved this little dream dictionary as a girl, and I remember looking up what a rainbow was. And I remember it saying like, "Oh, your dearest wish is going to come true." And I was thinking to myself, "Fat chance, that's make believe. Like, my biggest wish right now is I want my dogs to come home." And within just a few minutes of me reading that afternoon, I heard sounds in my backyard out of nowhere, and they had brought my dogs back home from the pound. And people could have just said like, "Oh, you live in a small town, your dogs are, big German shepherds, like they're very easy to spot, they're very easy to bring home, like they're it's not like a Chihuahua in a big city." But the timing of it and the emotional charge of it, and that I very sincerely wanted nothing more in my world than my beloved dogs to come home. And, that it was a lucid dream and it was a rainbow, and that rainbows are like such a universal symbol of hope, And so it's a very simple thing, but and it has plenty of room for other people to just be like, "Oh, you're just a kid, whatever." But for me, it was meaningful. And I feel like that's some of the trickiness with people sharing those stories or even just believing it for themselves. A lot of times people will kind of just gaslight themselves when they, how many times does the universe have to wink at you for you to believe it? And I remember distinctly like having those experiences growing up and just thinking to myself, like, how many times does it have to wink at you? And I think, at some point I just heard a voice in my head say five. And, I'm at the point in my life where like we're hundreds and hundreds of coincidences down the rabbit hole and there's no going back, like I can't even count, how many started that five. But, even something as simple as I had so many really intense lucid dreams the year my dad passed, and I was his advocate in the hospital and spending a lot of time with him. But I was also just like being a hardcore psychonaut and doing a lot of visionary work, and it bled over into my dream life in a very intense way. And, there might not be external confirmation for the synchronistic nature of a lot of those dreams, but I absolutely think that those dreams were sort of like divinely ordained to be a part of my story when I was going through that with my dad. And, there would be moments after his passing where, I had never searched on YouTube for the song I was named after. It just wasn't really a part of my lexicon at the time. And, I remember shortly after realizing why he named me after a particular song. I was having a very intense morning after a visionary experience, and not in a bad way, but just like being present with the gravity of life and like how much you love somebody. And out of nowhere, the YouTube algorithm decided to show me that song that he named me after. And um, I quite literally had not felt him in the ether, in his passing. He was doing his own thing in the bardo, he's his own soul. And, like he's just got so much karma besides his children. But in that moment, I genuinely felt like his spirit move through the energy in my life, and it felt like wind under the wings of like a little bird, and it was very meaningful. And it's so subtle that like it's very difficult to explain to another person and have them see the synchronistic nature of it. But like they don't know my algorithm on YouTube, they don't know the songs that I listen to or like what YouTube knows I want to hear. But just like the cool synchronicity of in that moment when I was feeling those heightened feelings that it's like the radio playing your favorite song. Like when I was a little girl, I could predict the songs that would be on the radio, and it scared me. Was I just so in tune with the psyche of my favorite radio DJ, Nick from Sacramento Quad 105, like was I so in sync with his taste and aesthetic that I knew that he would play this song in the afternoon and then he would play this song, and that, he's like a DJ, so he has this vibe that he rides. And as a child, like, did I just have an intuitive pattern matching capacity to know like how he would curate the afternoon of music? Or was I really just like psychic and in tune with it? So it's hard to decipher like those things. But when it's uncanny, when you're picking up the phone at the same time someone's calling you and it doesn't even ring, back in the day when we would have our corded phones, like we just like people, I feel like it's muscle memory. The more you are open to those possibilities, without sounding like a schizophrenic, like you open yourself up to channeling energies that are resonantly harmonic with that greater mind and with the people around you. And it's up to the individual whether or not they're going to be open to believing that that's like a magical thing or just a pattern matching coincidence.
Yeah, if I can just add, Sarah talking about being able to predict the songs made me think about I don't know if you're familiar with psychologist Dean Radin and his research into what he called the
He'll be on my show next week. Yeah.
oh fantastic, yeah, you talk about the presentiment research
Yeah.
where they show people on a computer screen. They're hooked up, they have a galvanic skin response, and they show people on a computer screen either a very violent image, a very erotic image, or a very calming image. And when people see these images, they have a galvanic skin response. There's a change in the electrical conductivity of their skin as a response to the type of image. And what's remarkable is that this response begins not only before the image appears on the screen, before they actually see it, but it begins before the computer itself even chooses the image. So it's a remarkable example of how our bodies and our minds and our brains have some kind of precognitive ability. But I wanted to ask you, Bernie, you're really the expert on synchronicity, and you have this stellar background in psychiatry. I'm sure you've studied a lot about dreams. What's your experience with lucid dreaming, and what kind of similarity or connection do you see between lucid dreaming and synchronicity?
I have not had a lucid dream.
Uh-huh.
So to make the comparison would be difficult because for me, the lucid dream has been for a long time living in while I'm awake, these synchronicities that I see so often. So that's been my dream work, has been meaningful coincidences. So I don't I can't answer your question, David. Thank you for asking, but I can't. So that's why I was asking each of you about it, because it's an altered state, and altered states and synchronicity are related to each other. But I have a like an academic thing where you concentrate on one thing and get good at it. And that's what I've been doing with synchronicity. Precognitive dreams are part of synchronicity. Um, I've had precognitive experiences, but they've been in real life, not in dreaming. Um, I had a precognitive experience before a football game. When I was in college, I did some maneuvers with two tackling dummies, ran right through them a couple of times, uh, and then went back and played with the with our team, practiced, and then on 2 days later on Saturday, I catch a punt over my head, turn around, and there's these two guys right next to each other coming at me. So I had already seen what was going to happen. That was a precognitive acting out. It wasn't a dream. So that these have been my experiences that because I move a lot, like to move. Maybe that's why it came out. So I can't really tell you. But thanks for asking. And the idea that the two of you are out there psychonauting, um, I do too in my own way. And so you expand my capacity to understand what else is going on out there, because I know I'm only got a part of it, and synchronicity is an important part of it, connecting mind and environment, or mind and other people. And that's why talking about these dream diaries that people put together is so important to me, because that's another way of looking for meaningful coincidences that can be useful for humanity. So I'll leave both of you, we need to stop in about a minute or two. I'll leave both of you with a question. When you go, each of you talk with the, the intelligence behind the lucid dreaming, see if you can get any advice about what humanity needs to do with itself, and not what, but how. How do we reverse or change this trend towards killing ourselves, towards reducing the human population as we're doing the population of other beings on the planet? So if you guys come up with any ideas about from the higher intelligences, whoever they are, let me know.
I will definitely keep that in mind, and I will definitely
Absolutely.
let you know. Yeah, and just to say, you may have a lucid dream tonight, Bernie, because it's very common that people discuss it and talk about it, and then they have their first lucid dream. So you may tonight, and I hope to see you there, and then we
I'll
can have the
I'll
dream
keep alert. I'll keep alert to the possibility, be
Okay.
able to accept it. So thank
Mhm.
you both very much for being on the show with me again, and it's been a delight talking with each and both of you.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Let's do it again.
All right.
Yeah, likewise, Bernie. Thank you. It's always a treat.